Pokémon, I became a principal and hired Liu Bo as a teacher. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 I Will Resist It. Kong Xian nodded, knowing that now is the time to use his earth magic to protect Yuang. He stood beside the altar, staff raised high, ready to respond to any threat. Yuang closed her eyes and concentrated on connecting with the energy of the altar. She felt a surge of information pouring into her mind, which was about rituals and spells to unblock. She began to recite the incantation silently, and at the same time used the power of starlight to integrate her consciousness with the altar. The air in the cave became tense, as if there was an invisible force surging. Kong Xian felt the fluctuations of magical energy around him, and he looked around vigilantly, ready to face possible threats at any time. Suddenly, there was a huge roar in the cave, and the ground shook. A dark aura filled the air, and the walls of the cave began to collapse, releasing black smoke. Kong Xian holds the staff tightly and is ready to face new challenges. In the black smoke, a huge Pokémon of sorrow appeared, its eyes shining with evil light, and it seemed to be the incarnation of the god of darkness. The Pokémon of sorrow let out a deep roar and attacked towards the altar and Yuang. Kong Xian used earth magic to create a solid earth wall to block the attack of the Pokémon of sorrow, while shouting loudly, "Moon Shadow, continue to unblock. I will resist it." Yuang gritted her teeth tightly, and her voice resounded throughout the cave. "I will not let you fail. This altar is our hope." Kong Xian and Yuang worked together. He stood firm and used earth magic to resist the attacks of the Pokémon of sorrow, while Yuang continued to recite the unsealing spell silently, trying to awaken the power of the altar. The battle in the cave breaks out again. The power of the Pokémon of sorrow is extremely powerful. Kong Xian and Yuang must go all out. They know that only by unsealing the altar can they find the way to the dark power of imprison, otherwise this ancient power will forever plague the Yanhuang continent. The atmosphere in the cave became increasingly tense. Black smoke filled the air, and the roar of the Pokémon of sorrow was deafening. Kong Xian and Yuang knew that they must take stronger measures to fight against this dark force. "Kong Xian, we need help to summon Pokémon," Yuang shouted loudly, her voice full of determination. Kong Xian nodded. He knew this was the only way out. He and Yuang released Pokémon signals at the same time, calling out to the Pokémon in Yanhuang continent. After a while, Pokémon with flashing lights appeared in the cave. They were slender and had their own special abilities. These Pokémon are the guardians of Yanhuang continent. When summoned, they stand beside Kong Xian and Yuang without hesitation, preparing to fight against a Pokémon of sorrow. Kong Xian and Yuang's cooperation is incomparable. Kong Xian uses earth magic to create a solid shield to protect Yuang and other Pokémon. Yuang continued to recite the unblocking spell silently. Her body was surrounded by starlight, exuding mysterious energy. The Pokémon of sorrow launch increasingly frenzied attacks, but they must face Kong Xian, Moon Shadow, and a group of powerful Pokémon guardians. The Pokémon have a clear division of labor, and each one shows amazing combat skills. Zhao Deleng, the wind Pokémon, controls strong winds and blows away the attacks of dark forces. The fire Pokémon sprays scorching flames and burns black smoke. The water Pokémon condenses water droplets to form a solid defensive barrier. Don't let them get close to the altar, Kong Xian ordered loudly, his eyes firm. Moon Shadow's spell gradually resounded through the cave, and her starlight energy continued to condense, awakening the power of the altar. The cracks on the altar's surface became more obvious, and the resistance of the dark forces became more intense. Chapter 227 Cave restores tranquility. Kong Xian stood in front of the earth wall, sweat dripping down his forehead, his staff still held high, and the magic of earth continued to flow. He felt the power of the Pokémon guardians around him, who tirelessly resisted the attacks of the Pokémon of sorrow and protected Moon Shadow. Yuang's spell echoed in the cave. The starlight became more and more dazzling, and her body seemed to be integrated with the altar. The cracks on the altar continued to expand, and the howl of the dark forces growl becomes more desperate, but they still refused to compromise and continued to launch fierce attacks on the altar. Kong Xian's eyes were firm, and he knew he couldn't slack off at all. The earthy yellow light on the earthen wall became more and more dazzling, and he integrated his will into it, making the earthen wall stronger. The Pokémon guardians also went all out, and their attacks became more orderly, forcing the Pokémon of sorrow to retreat steadily. "Hang in there, we're going to succeed." Kong Xian shouted to the Pokémon Guardians, and they all nodded and increased their attack intensity. Moonshadow's Starlight spell finally reached its peak. The altar emitted a dazzling light, and the dark forces could no longer resist it. They turned into black crystals one after another and were absorbed by the altar. Imprison was completed, and the atmosphere in the cave gradually calmed down. The Pokémon Guardians stopped attacking, their mission accomplished, and disappeared into the light again. Kong Xian breathed a sigh of relief, and his physical strength was almost exhausted. He slowly sat on the ground, with his staff hanging beside him. Yuang also breathed a sigh of relief. Her body was a little weak, but she had a victorious smile on her face. The light of the altar gradually faded, and Dongli returned to tranquility. Kong Xian raised his head and looked at Yuang, his eyes full of gratitude and respect. Yuang, you are amazing. His voice was full of respect. Yuang smiled slightly and responded in a low voice, Kong Xian, you are just as amazing. I couldn't complete the spell without your persistence. Peace is restored in the cave, but both Kong Xian and Yuang know that their mission is not yet complete. We need to move forward and find a way to imprison the dark forces. Kong Xian said, looking around the cave. Yuang nodded, her eyes showing tenacity. Yes, we can't stop here. She stared at the altar, feeling the presence of the ancient power. The two set out again and embarked on an unknown road deep in the cave. Their footsteps echoed in the cave, as if they were swearing their loyalty to Yanhuan continent. Along the way, they encountered various challenges. The winding passages in the cave are sometimes as wide as a courtyard, and sometimes as narrow as a thin line. Some places are filled with dangerous traps, while others are blocked by mysterious magical obstacles. Kong Xian and Yuang always work as a team to deal with these challenges. Kong Xian uses his earth magic to detect traps and create safe passages. Moonshadow uses the power of starlight to unlock magical obstacles and open a way forward. They spent several days in this ancient cave, and time seemed to have lost its meaning in this deep place. But finally, when they passed the last hurdle, a shocking scene appeared in front of them. At the end of the cave is a huge underground palace, which exudes a mysterious atmosphere. The walls are inlaid with precious stones, and the ground is covered with contest stone tiles. In the center of the palace is a magnificent jade throne, on which sits an exquisite Pokémon queen, whose beauty almost transcends mortal understanding. Period. Chapter 228. The Secret Realm of Elements of the Earth. The Pokémon Queen stared at Kong Xian and Yuang, as if she already knew their arrival. Her voice was clear and ancient, resounding throughout the palace. Kong Xian and Yuang, welcome to my realm. What you are looking for is the secret of imprison that I hold. Kong Xian and Yuang looked at each other, and they finally found the clue to the answer. Her Majesty the Queen, we urgently need to unblock the dark forces in order to protect the peace of Yanhuan continent. Please tell us about imprison's approach. Kong Xian said respectfully. The Pokémon Queen smiled slightly. Her beauty was like the first ray of sunshine in the morning. The imprison of the dark forces is indeed an ancient and complex ritual, but if you are willing to accept my guidance, I can help you complete it. Yuang nodded, expressing her willingness. Please tell us how to do it, Her Majesty. The Pokémon Queen stood up and walked slowly to the Amarylin, her robes trailing on the ground. First, you need to collect 4 elemental gems, representing earth, water, fire, and when these gems are scattered in the 4 extreme places of Yanhuan continent, only by gathering the power of these 4 gems can the imprison of the dark forces be unlocked. Kong Xian and Yuang listened to the Queen's words and understood the next task in their hearts. The Pokémon Queen's words echoed in the palace, and both Kong Xian and Yuang knew that the challenges ahead were just beginning. Her Majesty the Queen, we will follow your instructions and go to the elemental secret realm of the earth. Kong Xian said solemnly, his eyes full of determination. Moonshadow also nodded in agreement. Yes, we will do whatever it takes to find the elemental stones and unlock the dark forces imprison. The Pokémon Queen nodded slightly, trust in her eyes. The journey to the elemental realm of the earth is full of tests, but you have each other's support and courage. May nature power be with you. Following the Queen's words, an emerald stone ring in her hand flashed with green light and floated in the air. The emerald stone ring contains the ancient elemental power of the earth, and it will be their key to the secret realm of the earth's elements. Kong Xian and Yuang reached out to catch the jade stone ring and felt the power contained in it. Then, they bowed to the Pokémon Queen, turned and left the palace. After walking out of the palace, they came to the entrance of the underground cave. Ask for flowers. 0 cave leads to the elemental secret realm of the earth, which is a realm full of unknowns. Kong Xian and Yuang stared at the dark passage, and then took the first step together. After entering the cave, they found themselves in a dark and mysterious environment. The ground is covered with thick moss, and tall underground plants grow around it, exuding a faint aroma of vegetation. "It's really wonderful and mysterious here," Yuang whispered, her eyes full of curiosity. Kong Xian nodded. He was also full of interest in this underground world. "We must be careful and follow the Queen's instructions to find the elemental gem of the earth." The two traveled through this ancient and unknown underground world, sometimes encountering strange landforms and sometimes strange creatures. They supported each other and overcame one difficulty after another together. Suddenly, a vast underground grassland appeared in front, with colorful flowers scattered on the grass. The sun shone through the cracks on the top of the cave, illuminating the entire scene. "Is this the secret realm of the elements of the earth?" Kong Xian asked in surprise. He didn't expect it to be so beautiful here. Period. Chapter 229 Water Elemental Gem. Yuang looked at those flowers with a smile on her face. These are the legendary flowers of the earth in Yanhuang continent. They can only grow on the most primal and pure land. Kong Xian walked to a bright lace and gently touched its petals. They felt very soft, like silk. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew by, and those flowers seemed to have come to life, swaying with the wind and making a sweet sound, like the 830 strings of a harp. Yuang closed her eyes and felt a breath of the earth. I felt that the elemental gem of the earth was in the center of this grassland. The two decided to follow a path illuminated by the sun. Soon, they came to a huge stone monument. In the middle of the stele, there is a huge gem inlaid, which emits a soft light, and the flowers around it are leaning towards it, as if they are worshipping. Kong Xian approached the stone tablet and wanted to pick off the gem. However, when he reached out and touched the gem, he suddenly felt a strong vibration. Yuang hurriedly stepped forward and pulled Kong Xian away. "Be careful. This gem has a protective mechanism." Kong Xian nodded, feeling a little embarrassed. "Thank you, Yuang. I was too impulsive." The two began to carefully observe the stone tablet, hoping to find a way to remove the gem. There are some ancient words and patterns on the stone tablets, but they don't recognize them. It seems that this is an ancient language. Yuang said, "I remember this kind of writing was mentioned in the ancient Pokémon book. It is used to record some important rituals and skills." Kong Xian thought for a while. Maybe the protective mechanism of this gem is related to these words. "We need to find the right way to open it." Yuang looked at the words and suddenly had an idea. "Kong Xian, do you still remember the 4 elements mentioned by the Pokémon Queen? Earth, water, fire, and wind. Perhaps these words are codes representing these 4 elements." Kong Xian nodded. He carefully observed the words on the stone tablet, and then touched 4 of the words with his hand. Suddenly, the gem emitted a dazzling light, and the entire cave was enveloped in chaos. The words on the stone tablet began to glow blue, and then they disappeared one by one, leaving only the gem. When the light gradually disappeared, both Kong Xian and Yuang were stunned. They succeeded. Kong Xian stepped forward and gently picked off the gem. "This is the elemental gem of the earth. We found the first one." Yuang smiled and congratulated us. "But this is just the beginning. We still have 3 more gems to find." The two embarked on a journey to find elemental gems again. They believed that as long as they had each other's company and support, nothing could stop them. Not far away, a pair of mysterious eyes were staring at them closely, as if looking for opportunities. The secret water realm of Yanhuang continent is known as the most beautiful place, but it is also the most dangerous. According to legend, there is a water elemental gem deep in the secret realm, but to obtain it in 2.0, you need to go through countless tests. When Kong Xian and Yuang walked into the secret realm of water, the scenery in front of them shocked them both. Like a crystal-clear glass world, there are flowing crystal-like rivers everywhere. These rivers seem to be alive, and the flow reveals tranquility and peace. In the water flow, there are various colorful fishes shuttled among them, as if they are performing a gorgeous dance for the two of them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 has mysterious power. This is really beautiful, Yuang whispered, with a pure smile on his face. Kong Xian looked at this kingdom of water and was shocked by the mysterious beauty. But we cannot forget our mission. The two continued to explore forward, and soon they came to a huge waterfall. Under the waterfall is a deep blue lake. There seems to be a mysterious step in the center of the lake, leading to an unknown place at the bottom of the lake. Yuang looked at Kong Xian. "Should we go down to 14 and have a look?" Kong Xian nodded. "Yes, but we have to be careful." The two walked down the steps, and gradually they discovered that the water here was not ordinary water, but a liquid with mysterious power. They seemed to be able to understand people's voices, flowing with the footsteps of Kong Xian and Yuang, revealing all kinds of gorgeous lights. As the two of them went deeper, they came to a huge crystal palace. The palace is surrounded by that mysterious liquid, and in the center of the palace is the legendary water element gem. Kong Xian looked at Yuang. "I will be careful this time." Yuang smiled slightly. "I believe you." At this moment, the water in the lake suddenly began to surge violently, and a huge water column spewed out of the lake and headed straight for the two of them. Kong Xian hurriedly grabbed Yuang. "Be careful." The two escaped the attack of the water column, but the lake seemed to become more violent. A huge water dragon splashed from the lake, with a sharp gaze in its eyes, as if it wanted to tear Kong Xian and Yuang into pieces. Kong Xian clenched the elemental gem of the earth in his hand and said to Yuang, "We must get that gem before we can leave here." Yuang took a deep breath. "Then let's go together." The two of them rushed towards the water element gem, and the water dragon followed closely behind. Kong Xian and Yuang tried their best and finally reached the front of the gem. Kong Xian stretched out his hand and held the gem tightly. Suddenly, the gem emitted a strong light, and the entire lake was shocked. The water dragon stopped attacking, and its body began to gradually become transparent, and finally turned into a drop of water, dripping into the lake. Kong Xian picked up the gem and said to Yuang, "We did it." Yuang smiled. "This time, it was our victory." Together the two walked out of the secret realm of water and continued their adventure. The water elemental gem became their new source of power, complementing the earth elemental gem. However, those mysterious eyes were still staring at them in the dark, as if waiting for the next opportunity. At this moment, Kong Xian and Yu Ying were walking together. Soon they came to a stone hall. Kong Xian stared at these stone pillars and took a deep breath. "This is the place where the dark forces of ancient imprison lived, and it is also the end of our trip." Yuang 407 gently held Kong Xian's hand. "Kong Xian, we can't take it lightly. There may be other dangers hidden here." Kong Xian nodded. "I know, but we can't give up. For the sake of Yanhuang continent and those innocent creatures, we must succeed." The two slowly walked into the ancient land of imprison, and were greeted by a huge stone door. There is a huge drop-shaped pattern engraved on the door, surrounded by some small inscriptions. Kong Xian approached the stone door and tried to push it open, but the stone door did not move. He tried to use the power of the elemental gem of the earth again, but it still had no effect. Chapter 231. Continue deep into the underground palace. Yuang walked to Kong Xian and gently stroked the water drop-shaped pattern. This was a water rune and required a water elemental gem to be activated. Kong Xian suddenly understood. He took out the water element gem he had just obtained from his arms and placed it tightly on the water drop-shaped pattern. With Kong Xian's operation, the water runes on the stone door began to emit a soft blue light, and the entire stone door began to slowly open, revealing a huge underground space. The two of them cautiously entered this space, which was like a huge underground palace. The high dome is hung with sparkling crystals, and the surrounding walls are all exquisite stone carvings, depicting the history and stories of Yanhuang continent. Yuang looked at these stone carvings with deep thoughts in her eyes. These stone carvings record the past of Yanhuang continent and the history of the dark force imprison. Kong Xian holds the two gems in his hands tightly. "We must find a way to imprison the dark forces in order to protect the peace of Yanhuang continent." The two continued deep into the underground palace, and soon they came to a huge stone platform. There is an ancient scroll on the stone platform, and next to it is an ancient book with a mottled cover. Kong Xian stepped forward and carefully opened the scroll, only to see some strange runes written on it. He tried to read the runes, but found that he did not recognize them. Yuang took a look and said, "This is ancient writing, and only those who study ancient culture can interpret it." Kong Xian thought for a moment. "Yuang, can we take these materials back and find people who study ancient culture to help us interpret them?" Yuang nodded. "I thought so too. We can't waste time here." The two carefully put away the scrolls and ancient books and prepared to leave this ancient place of imprison. However, when they just walked to the stone door, suddenly the entire underground space shook, and the huge stone door began to slowly close. Yuang looked at Kong Xian nervously. "We have to get out of here quickly." Kong Xian held Yuang's hand tightly. "Don't worry, I'm here." The two quickened their pace and ran towards the stone gate, feeling the vibration behind them getting closer and closer. The stone gate was almost completely closed, leaving only a ray of skylight. Yuang shouted nervously, "Kong Xian, use the elemental gem of water quickly and see if you can slow down the closing speed of the stone door." Kong Xian didn't think much and immediately took out the water element gem and put it close to the stone door. A stream of light blue water flows from the gem and surrounds the edge of the stone door. Although the vibrations have not stopped, the closing speed of the stone door has indeed slowed down a bit. Quick, Yuang, rush out with me. Kong Xian shouted. The two of them almost exhausted all their strength and finally rushed out before the stone door was completely closed. After escaping the crisis, the two lay on the ground panting. Yuang's eyes showed gratitude. Fortunately, I have you, Kong Xian. Kong Xian smiled and said nothing more. The scene in front of him made him take a deep breath. The place where the two of them were now was actually a sea of blazing fire. The red flames seemed to be living entities. They danced, rotated, and made crackling burning sounds. The ground is hot lava, making a deep gurgling sound, and occasionally there are flaming birds flying up from the lava and hovering in the air. This is the secret realm of fire, Yuang said solemnly. Kong Xian nodded. He felt the thick fire element energy in the air. This place was undoubtedly the opposite of the secret realm of water. He began to think, what should he do if he wanted to find the fire elemental gem here? Chapter 232. There must be an ambush. Yuang looked at Kong Xian and said softly, we must be careful. The flames here look different from ordinary flames. I feel like they seem to have life. Kong Xian smiled slightly. Don't worry, as long as we are careful, there should be no problem. The two began to explore the secret realm of fire, taking every step carefully to avoid the violent flames and hot magma. But they discovered that this secret realm of fire was different from the secret realm of water. It did not have clear guidance, but was like a huge maze, full of unknowns and dangers. After walking for a long time, the sight in front of Kong Xian made him stop. Ahead is a huge 520 volcano. Thick smoke and lava are constantly coming out of the mouth of the volcano. Halfway up the mountainside of the volcano, there is a stone platform with a sparkling gemstone placed on it. That's the fire elemental gem, Yuang said excitedly. Kong Xian looked at the gem, thought for a moment, and said, there must be an ambush in such an obvious place. We have to be careful. Yuang nodded. You are right. This may be a trial. The two approached the stone platform cautiously, and saw the fire element gem emitting blazing red light. Kong Xian stretched out his hand, and was about to touch the gem, when suddenly, the entire secret realm of fire shook. A huge fire dragon flew out of volcano's mouth. The fire dragon's body was blazing, and its eyes showed a sharp light. When it saw Kong Xian and Yuang, it made a deafening roar and rushed towards them. Yuang held Kong Xian's hand tightly and whispered, Kong Xian, we have to face it together this time. Kong Xian took a deep breath and showed determination. No problem, we will not back down for the sake of Yanhuang continent. A battle between Fire Dragon, Kong Xian and Yu Ying is about to begin, and the real secret of the secret realm of fire will also be revealed. The body of the Fire Dragon seems to be made of pure flames, mixed with black smoke. Its eyes are like two rubies, and its fiery gaze looks directly at Kong Xian and Yuang. Kong Xian, do you think it will attack us directly? Yuang asked carefully, retreating slightly. Kong Xian observed the fire dragon calmly and replied, I feel that this fire dragon is not the real enemy, it may just be the guardian of the secret realm of fire. We should try to communicate with it instead of attacking directly. The fire dragon circled around them, making a low buzzing sound, as if to warn them not to act rashly. Kong Xian walked slowly towards the fire dragon, with his hands open to express peace. Fire Dragon, we are not here to invade this secret realm. We just want the fire elemental gem to help the Yanhuang continent maintain balance. Kong Xian used the language of the heart to convey his intention to the fire dragon. The fire dragon stopped circling and locked its fiery gaze on Kong Xian. Its voice is like lava roll out, deep and majestic. Why should I believe you? You mortals are always greedy. Kong Xian knew that negotiating with the fire dragon required patience, and he sighed. Fire dragon, we are indeed mortals, but we are not all greedy. What you see is just the behavior of some people on Yanhuang continent. The reason why I came here is because the elements on Yanhuang continent are out of balance, and the conflict between fire and water is becoming increasingly fierce. Only by obtaining the elemental gem of fire can the balance be restored. Yuang also walked up. She took a deep breath and added, our goal is not for ourselves, but for the peace and prosperity of the entire continent. Please believe us, Dragon of Fire. Chapter 233. Control of the Fire Element. The fire dragon was silent for a moment, and then said slowly, I can feel the sincerity in your hearts. But the fire element gem cannot be given casually. You need to go through a trial. Kong Xian and Yuang looked at each other and nodded. We are willing to accept the trial. The fire dragon spread its wings and flew to Volcano's mouth, wrapping its body around Volcano. It opened its huge mouth and spit out more a ball of fire. This is the soul bead of fire. You need to go through the sea of fire to bring this soul bead to me, but you only have 3 chances. Kong Xian was well aware of the difficulty of this trial, so he decided to challenge it first. He took a deep breath, mobilized the power of the fire element in his body to protect himself from the flames, and then he began to cross the sea of fire. The flames in the sea of fire were like living creatures, constantly twisting and attacking Kong Xian. He cleverly avoided it, relying on his control over the fire element, and gradually approached the fire soul bead. Yuang watched nervously from the side, silently cheering Kong Xian on. Whenever Kong Xian was in danger, she would sweat for him after some hard work. Kong Xian finally got the fire soul bead. He excitedly raised it high and returned to Yuang's side. The fire dragon stared at them and made a satisfied voice. Very good, you passed my trial. The fire elemental gem is there, you can take it. Kong Xian and Yuang felt happy, knowing that their journey was about to be completed. But the moment Kong Xian touched the gem, the entire secret realm of fire began to shake violently, and the sea of fire surged, as if the whole world was collapsing. The fire dragon's body began to emit a more intense red light, and the light became more and more dazzling until the entire secret realm of fire was rendered with this red light. Kong Xian and Yuang had to close their eyes. When the two opened their eyes again, the fire dragon had disappeared without a trace. The secret realm of fire returned to calm, with only the fire element gems on the table still shining with blazing red light. Yuang opened her eyes wide. The fire dragon, did it really disappear like this? Kong Xian clenched the fire element gem in his hand. It should have returned to the depths of the secret realm of fire. As the guardian here, it will not leave too far after all. At this moment, a crack appeared in the air, and with strong energy fluctuations, several figures walked out of the crack. They wore black shirts, and each had a hot flame mark on their chest. Please give me flowers. It turns out that the fire dragon disappeared because of you. Kong Xian held the elemental gem tightly and looked at them solemnly. Haha, Kong Xian, you are really smart. The leading man said while summoning a fire Pokémon from behind. This Pokémon has a slender body and is wrapped in flames. It seems to be somewhat similar to a fire dragon. Moon Shadow summoned her water elemental Pokémon. The icy blue aqua ring surrounding her in stark contrast to the fire Pokémon. Who are you? Why do you want to snatch the fire element gem? Yuang asked. The man laughed sarcastically. We are the Flame Sect, and the fire elemental gem originally belonged to us. You outsiders are not worthy of owning it. Kong Xian sneered. Your purpose is just to abuse the power of this gem and destroy the balance of Yanhuan continent. Yes, with this gem, the Yan cult will rule the entire continent. The man showed greedy eyes. Kong Xian and Yu Ying looked at each other, and they both knew that the next battle would be extremely difficult. Period. Chapter 234. Although there are many people, the two summoned their own Pokémon at the same time. Kong Xian's Pokémon was a huge earth giant with a body as hard as stone, while Yu Ying's was a water Pokémon with a body that flowed like water. The two sides immediately started a fierce battle, with flames and water flow, soil and flames intertwined to form a huge whirlpool. Every collision was accompanied by a deafening roar, and the secret realm of fire seemed to be trembling. Although there are many members of the Flame 423 Flame Sect, Kong Xian and Yu Ying have always protected the fire elemental gem with their excellent combat skills and deep elemental control. You can't defeat us. The power of the Yan cult is unmatched. The leading man roared, clasping his hands together, and a huge fire spin formed in front of him, heading straight towards Kong Xian. Kong Xian raised his hands and summoned an earth shield. The hard shield blocked fire spin's attack, but the huge impact still made him take several steps back. Seeing that Kong Xian was at a disadvantage, Yu Ying immediately activated her water elemental Pokémon, and a huge stream of water rushed towards the man. The battle lasted for several hours, and both sides were exhausted, but neither had any intention of backing down until Yu Ying's Pokémon summoned a huge water dragon, which directly knocked back the leading man and other members. After being repelled by the water dragon, the members of the Flame Sect fled one after another. Kong Xian and Yu Ying held each other's hands and sat down tiredly. They knew that although the battle was successful this time, the Flame Sect was still a threat. Yu Ying patted Kong Xian's shoulder lightly. We did it. Yanhuang continent will be more peaceful because of us. Kong Xian nodded. Yes, but we still need to work harder to protect this land. Kong Xian and Yuang sat on the ruins of the secret realm of fire. Although they had won, there was not much joy on their faces. Kong Xian's earth giant and Yuang's water Pokemon were also nearby, as if they also felt their master's heavy heart. Kong Xian, do you think the Yan'an church will give up just like this? Yuang asked softly, her eyes full of worry. Kong Xian shook his head. No, they won't give up the fire elemental gem just like that. We need to be more prepared. Moon Shadow nodded, then turned to her water Pokemon. What do you think? Can we fight again? The water Pokemon let out a low groan, as if to indicate that it still has fighting power. That's good. Yuang smiled, then looked at Kong Xian. We need to find more allies. Kong Xian took a deep breath and then stood up. Yes, we can't fight alone like this anymore. There are still many forces on the Yanhuang continent, and we need to unite. But we have to wait until we get out to talk about all this. Kong Xian and Yuang left the secret realm of fire and embarked on a journey to the Pokemon Queen. They walked along the ancient forests of Yanhuang continent, and the vigorous natural atmosphere filled the air. This forest is the 0.7 territory of the wood element, possessing mysterious power. Every tree seems to be alive with normal, dancing in tacit understanding with Kong Xian and Yuang. Gradually, they walked into a mysterious vegetation, and a huge tree castle gradually appeared in front of them. The castle is like a huge living tree, majestic and covered with green leaves. The castle door slowly opened. Period. Chapter 235. The threat still exists. They were greeted by a beautiful female Pokemon, wearing a green leafy robe. The female Pokemon's skin is as white as snow, her eyes are as deep as a forest pool, and her long hair falls down her back like a waterfall. She raised her hand to signal Kong Xian and Yu Ying to approach, and her voice was like a sweet bird call. Kong Xian, Yu Ying, welcome to the secret realm of the wood element. Kong Xian and Yuang bowed to the female Pokemon, and Kong Xian smiled and said, Pokemon Queen, we are here to seek your help. The threat of Yan'an cult still exists, and we need to unite to defend Yanhuang continent. The Pokemon Queen smiled and nodded, and her eyes seemed to penetrate Kong Zhonghe and 14 Yungying's hearts for a moment. I admire your courage and determination. The flame cult is indeed a threat, and we will provide support, but first, let us welcome you. The Pokemon Queen then led them through the castle's corridors and into a mysterious hall. The hall exudes a faint fragrance of flowers, the ground is paved with soft moss, and the surrounding walls are covered with contest green plants. In the center of the hall is a huge wooden throne carved with images of trees and nature. The Pokemon Queen invited them to sit down, and then continued, Kong Xian, Yuang, your victory has spread throughout Yanhuang continent. Your courage and wisdom make us proud. We are willing to work with you to resist the threat of the flame cult. Yuang said gratefully, Pokemon Queen, your support is crucial to us. Kong Xian added, we believe that only by uniting can we defeat the threat of the flame cult. The Pokemon Queen smiled and nodded, that's right. Now, please accept our present. She raised her hand, and a beam of green light rose from her palm, then flew towards Kong Xian and Yuang. The light turned into two emerald green gems, one suspended on Kong Xian's palm, and the other suspended on Yuang's palm. These gems sparkle with a faint light, exuding the power of the wood element. Kong Xian and Yuang exchanged glances and felt the existence of this mysterious power. Kong Xian said, is this the power of the wood element? The Pokemon Queen nodded affirmatively. Yes, these gems contain the power of the wood element. They will become your source of strength and will come in handy when facing your enemies. Yuang accepted the gem with a smile. She could feel the warmth and tranquility of the wood element. Thank you for your generosity. Kong Xian also put the gem in his arms and said solemnly, Pokemon Queen, we will do our best to protect this land. The Pokemon Queen's eyes were gentle but firm. I believe you will now. I will teleport you to the entrance of the wood element's secret realm. The air in the 710 lobby shimmered. The Pokemon Queen waved her finger gently, and an emerald green crack appeared in the air. Kong Xian and Yuang stepped across the crack and were instantly transported to the entrance of the great elemental secret realm. The secret realm of wood element is completely different from the secret realm of fire. Here is a dense forest, with huge trees standing there like guardians. The sunlight shines on the ground through the gaps in the leafage, forming mottled light spots. The air is filled with freshness in the secret realm of the wood element. Kong Xian and Yuang walked through the lush woods. The sun casts mottled light and shadow through the gaps in the leafage, and the tranquility of the trees bathes the entire environment. Chapter 236. The atmosphere is indeed different. The breeze blows gently, and the leafage rustles, as if the symphony orchestra of nature is playing. Kong Xian looked up at the huge trees and felt a strong presence of the power of the wood element here. He said to Yuang, "The atmosphere of the wood element's secret realm is indeed different and full of vitality." Yuang nodded, her eyes scanning the surroundings, looking for traces of the wood elemental gem. "We must find the wood elemental gem here. It will become our source of power." The two of them walked along the path and gradually came to an open area. In the center of this open space, there is an ancient temple, covered under vines and leafage, like a holy place swallowed by nature. Kong Xian and Yuang slowly approached the temple, and a mysterious aura came towards them suddenly. A black shadow rushed out from the depths of the temple and turned into a huge Pokémon. The beast's body became dark and full of hostility, and its red eyes flashed with evil light. Kong Xian held the wood element gem in his hand tightly and stared at the darkened Pokémon firmly. "This is a Pokémon corrupted by darkness. We must stop it." Mooney was also ready, her water Pokémon already standing beside her, ready to fight. The darkened Pokémon roared, and a dark energy surged towards them. Kong Xian quickly summoned the unearthed giant, using his hard body to resist the impact of dark energy, while shouting, "Moon Shadow, use your water elemental Pokémon to deal with it." Yuang nodded, and her water Pokémon turned into a huge stream of water, rolling towards the darkened Pokémon. The water flow collided with the dark energy, making a noisy sound, and the scene was extremely intense. Kong Xian decided to attack, and his earth giant waved its huge fist and slammed away at the darkened Pokémon. A force of earth swept in, knocking the Pokémon back several steps. However, the Pokémon was not easy to deal with. It roared and released darker energy, fighting back Kong Xian and Yuang. The battle became increasingly fierce, with both sides evenly matched and refusing to give in. Kong Xian shouted, "We must join forces to prevent it from escaping." Yuang nodded, and her water Pokémon increased its attack power, firmly suppressing the darkened Pokémon. Kong Xian activated the power of earth and gradually pushed the Pokémon deeper into the temple. The Pokémon roared, its body gradually lifted away from the corruption of darkness, and its original glory reappeared under the joint attack of Kong Xian and Yuang. The Pokémon finally collapsed and turned back into an ordinary Pokémon. Kong Xian and Yuang breathed a sigh of relief. They understood that this Pokémon was once kind, but was corrupted by darkness. Yuang patted Pokémon on the head gently. "You are safe now." The Pokémon let out a low groan of satisfaction, then disappeared into the light and flew away. Kong Xian said to Yuang, "We succeeded, but be careful. There may be other dark threats here." Yuang nodded, her eyes alert, and the two continued to search for traces of the wood elemental gem. Soon after, they came to the depths of the temple and discovered a gem that shone with emerald green light, quietly suspended on an ancient stone seat. Kong Xian cautiously approached the gem, stretched out his hand to touch it, and felt the power of trapped elements flowing through it. He said, "This is the elemental stone of wood. We found it." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237. Return to the Pokémon Queen's castle. Yuang smiled, and she reached out to touch the gem, feeling the warmth and strength. "It will become our source of strength and make us stronger." The two carefully put the wood element gems into their arms and prepared to leave this mysterious wood element's secret realm. However, they know that facing the threat of the flame cult, they still have more work to do and need to find more allies, and soon return to the Pokémon Queen's castle. The Pokémon Queen personally greeted them, her eyes full of anticipation. "You have found the wood elemental gem, and it will become your power king. Now, you have to go to the elemental secret realm of wind." Kong Xian and Yuang Dian 490 heads knew that the secret realm of wind elements would be a new journey, full of challenges. The Pokémon Queen led them through the passage of the castle and came to the entrance of the wind elemental secret realm. The elemental secret realm of wind is completely different from the previous two elemental secret realms. As soon as they walked in, a strong wind swept over them, almost knocking them down. They had to exert all their strength to stay standing in the secret realm of the element of wind. There are no trees or ground, only an endless storm. The wind was howling, carrying sand, dust and gravel, soaring in the sky with dark clouds, bedge, as if we were always in the storm. Kong Xian and Yuang struggled to maintain balance in the face of the strong wind. Their vision was disrupted, and they could barely see ahead. The Pokémon Queen leads the way. Her figure seems to be able to navigate the storm, floating lightly in midair. Kong Xian shouted loudly, "Pokémon Queen, the wind here is too strong. How are we going to move forward?" The Pokémon Queen's voice came over the wind. "Hang on. Use your elemental powers to protect yourself. The elemental secret realm of wind will test your perseverance." The central god of Yuangler activated the water element Pokémon to surround her and Kong Xian with a water curtain, resisting the invasion of the strong wind. Kong Xian relied on the power of earth to form solid ground under his feet, stabilizing his figure. The Pokémon Queen leads them forward step by step. Although the storm is raging, their elemental power protects them and allows them to continue moving forward from time to time. A particularly strong wind came and tried to blow them away, but they held their ground and did not flinch. After a period of fighting, they finally arrived at the core area of the elemental secret realm of wind. The storm here is more violent, and the dark clouds soaring in the sky are thicker. Like the eye of the storm, in the center of the eye of the storm, there is a huge whirlwind vortex, which exudes powerful wind element energy. The Pokémon Queen said, "That's where the wind elemental gem is, but it's not easy to get there." Kong Xian and Yuang face a huge whirlwind and must find a way to enter the location of the wind elemental gem. The communication between them was almost swallowed up by the wind, but their trust and tacit understanding enabled them to face challenges together. Kong Xian shouted, "We must join forces and use our elemental powers to get through this whirlwind." Yuang nodded, and her water elemental Pokémon turned into a huge stream of water, scattering the storm and the whirlwind at the same time. Kong Xian summoned the unearthed giants to stabilize their positions with their hard bodies. The power of the storm seemed endless, and the powerful wind tore them apart, as if they were about to be swept into the bottomless abyss. Chapter 238. A huge test. Kong Xian felt that his body was almost torn apart by the wind, but he remained unwavering. He knew that only firm belief and elemental power could help them survive the storm. The water elemental Pokémon beside Yuang worked hard to maintain the stability of the water curtain. The corners of her mouth were slightly raised. Although she faced the strong wind, her faith never wavered. She shouted to Kong Xian, "We must persevere, the wind elemental gem is right ahead." The Pokémon Queen floats foolishly in the storm. Her experience is different from theirs because she is already familiar with this elemental secret realm. She turned to the two of them and said, "The secret realm of the element of wind is a huge test. Only by persisting can you gain its power." Finally, they came to the eye of the storm where the wind elemental gem was located. The wind here is even more fierce, and in the center of the whirlwind, the wind elemental gem shines alluringly, like the heart of a gem. The Pokémon Queen pointed to the gem and said, "That's the wind elemental gem. We need to get there and capture it." Kong Xian nodded, his eyes firm. Feeling the wind energy emitted by the gem, he knew that this gem would give them greater power, which would also be their motivation to move forward. Moonshadow approached the gem, and her water elemental Pokémon began to become more active. As if welcoming the arrival of the wind elemental, she said, "Let's move forward together, Kong Xian. We must work together to capture the gem." Kong Xian nodded, and the two walked side by side towards the wind elemental gem. The wind became more violent, as if it wanted to swallow them up, but their determination became stronger and stronger, and the power of the elements continued to grow. Just when they touched the gem, suddenly, a huge wind blade appeared out of thin air and struck them violently. They had no time to dodge and could only rely on elemental power to resist. Kong Xian convinced the unearthed giant and used his hard body to resist the attack of the wind blade, while Yuang's water elemental Pokémon turned into a solid water wall, blocking them in front of them. The wind blade tackles on the barrier of elemental power, making a harsh sound. The Pokémon Queen also joined the battle, with the power of the wind element surging around her, turning the wind blade into a breeze. She shouted, "Don't shrink back, the gem is right in front of you." Kong Xian and Yuang followed her instructions and continued moving forward. The wind became more and more violent, as if it was going to swallow them up. "Please give me flowers." However, their determination is stronger than the wind and their faith is stronger than the storm. Finally, they arrived next to the wind elemental gem. The gem exudes strong wind element energy, beating like a living heart. Kong Xian stretched out his hand and touched the gem carefully. The power of the wind element poured into his body, and he could feel the infinite power contained in the gem. He said, "We succeeded, and this gem will be a more powerful source of strength for us." Moonshadow also reached out to the gem. She felt the warmth and power of the wind element, and her water element Pokémon also danced happily. She said, "This gem will help us defend Yanheron continent." The Pokémon Queen looked at the two of them, Her eyes full of satisfaction and expectation. She knew that these two young Pokémon would become strong guardians of the Yanhuan continent. Then, the Pokémon Queen led them out of the secret realm of the wind element and returned to the castle. On the way back, the wind gradually subsided, as if the wind element also recognized their efforts and determination. Period. Chapter 239 Guarding the Yanhuan continent. The door to the castle slowly opened, and Kong Xian and Yuang followed the Pokémon Queen into a spacious hall. The fire burning in the fireplace casts a warm glow in the hall, illuminating the bronze-inlaid floors and contest tapestries. The Pokémon Queen turned around and flapped her broad wings gently, as if she was using the wind element to subtly guide the atmosphere. I am very happy that you can complete this trial. Yanhuan continent needs Pokémon with courage and determination like you. Kong Xian nodded, with deep respect in his eyes. We just fulfilled our responsibilities. Pokémon Queen Moonshadow's water elemental Pokémon spins gently around her, emitting bright spots of light, as if dancing with the wind elemental Pokémon. She said, "This wind element gem will help us better protect Yanhuan continent." Kong Xian showed the Pokémon Queen the mysteriously shining wind elemental gem in his hand. "This will be our shared responsibility to protect it." The Pokémon Queen took the gem, and the stroke elements in her hands surged like normal tide, creating a harmonious resonance with the gem. "Very good, I believe it will play its due role at the right time." Kong Xian and Yu Ying looked at each other, and both of them understood that this was the beginning of a new journey. Then, now you should return to the Evergreen Pokemon Academy and continue your work and study. I have a hunch that you will face greater challenges soon. Although the Pokemon Queen's tone was calm, the underlying meaning was no one knows. "Yes, Pokemon Queen." Kong Xian and Yuang responded in unison. The Pokemon Queen walked towards a side door in the hall and gently pushed it open. "Please go. The Pokemon in the academy are waiting for your return." Yuang walked to the door first and looked back at the Pokemon Queen. "Goodbye, Your Majesty." Kong Xian then walked to the door and saluted the Pokemon Queen. "We will definitely live up to your expectations." The door slowly closed, leaving the Pokemon Queen standing in the firelight, with a smile and endless anticipation on her face. Kong Xian and Yuang walked out of the castle, their hearts filled with new strength and responsibility. There was a faint fragrance of flowers in the air, and the stars in the night sky seemed to be celebrating their success. Yuang's water elemental Pokemon jumped happily beside her. "Kong Xian, I feel that we have become stronger." Kong Xian smiled. "Yes, but this is just the beginning. We still have a long way to go." Yuang nodded. "No matter when, I will be by your side." The night breeze gently brushed their cheeks, carrying the smell of upcoming adventures and challenges. Their shadows stretched out under the moonlight, as if foreshadowing the longer and broader future they were about to move towards. Kong Xian and Yuang walked on the narrow and dark forest path. Moonlight shone from the dense canopy of trees, like silver dotting the earth too. But no one expected that danger would quietly approach at this moment. Kong Xian suddenly felt a cold air flowing in the woods, frowned slightly, turned to Yuang and said, "Yuang, do you feel anything is wrong?" Moonshadow frowned, her water elemental Pokemon fluttering uneasily beside her. "I also feel that the atmosphere here has become very depressing." At this moment, a hoarse laughter suddenly came from the darkness, and then 4 black shadows emerged from the darkness, and a cold light came straight towards Kong Xian. Period. Chapter 240 Don't blame our men for being ruthless. Kong Xian immediately waved the magic wand in his hand, and the power of the wind element turned into a barrier, blocking the attack. He snapped, "Who are you and why did you attack us?" A Pokemon wearing a black cloak came out, his eyes full of malice. "We are dark Pokemon? Kong Xian, hand over the 4 elemental gems in your hands, otherwise you will all die." Moon Shadow holds the magic wand tightly, with the water elemental Pokemon beside her ready to fight. "Kong Xian, we can't give the gems to them." Kong Xian nodded and turned to the dark Pokemon. 14. The 4 elemental gems are treasures jointly guarded by Yanhuan continent. I can't let them fall into your hands. The dark Pokemon's lips curved into an evil smile. "Then don't blame our men for being ruthless." At this moment, the wind element gem in Kong Xian's hand suddenly flashed a light, which resonated with his wind element power. A powerful storm element burst out from his body, pushing 4 dark Pokemon away. Yuang didn't show any weakness, and the water elemental Pokemon released the power of frost together with her, blocking the movement of the dark Pokemon. "It's still too late to leave now, otherwise you'll be responsible for the consequences." Kong Xian said coldly. The dark Pokemon exchanged glances, obviously not expecting Kong Xian and Yuang to be so powerful. Eventually, they turned and disappeared into the darkness. Kong Xian withdrew his magic and turned to Yuang. Although we are safe this time, the dark Pokemon will not stop here. We need to be more careful. Yuang nodded. I understand, Kong Xian. We need to strengthen the Academy's defense to ensure the safety of the 4 elemental treasures. As soon as Kong Xian and Yuang walked out of the forest, a moist airflow came towards them, giving them a heavy feeling. Kong Xian suddenly felt the water element gem in his hand vibrate slightly, as if he sensed something. Do you feel it? Yuang turned around and asked. Kong Xian nodded. There is a power of water element approaching, and it is quite extraordinary. As soon as the two stopped walking, they saw a water elemental Pokemon flying out of the lake. This Pokemon's body is as transparent as crystal, as if it is composed of thousands of water drops, and its eyes carry a clear and complex emotion. You are Kong Xian, right? I sense the power of the water elemental gem in your hand. The water elemental Pokemon's voice was as melodious as spring water. Indeed, you are. I am Che, the water element Pokemon from Evergreen Lake. I hope to get the water element gem to enhance my power. Che answered. Kong Xian and Yuang looked at each other, then slowly shook their heads. Sorry, Che. This water elemental gem exists to protect the Yanhuan continent, and I cannot hand it over. Che's face suddenly became gloomy, and the water element in his body began to fluctuate uneasily. Such power should belong to a water element Pokemon? Why do you have the right to monopolize it? Yuang's water elemental Pokemon also floated to her side, with a hint of warning in her eyes. Che, power is for protection, not for monopoly. Che seemed to be stimulated, and the water element in his body began to turn black, and an atmosphere of depression and rage filled the air. Since you are unwilling to hand it over, don't blame me for being rude. Che shouted, instantly releasing a black water column and heading straight for Kong Xian. Kong Xian held the magic wand tightly, and a wind barrier immediately appeared in front of him and collided with the water column. Period. Chapter 241. Power is growing. Che, calm down. This won't do any good. Kong Xian advised calmly. Calm down? Ha, you humans will never understand the difficulties of our Pokemon. Che roared furiously. Yuang suddenly raised her magic wand, and a cold force surged out of the magic wand, forming a ring of frost with her water elemental Pokemon, blocking Che's attack path. Che, not all power is used for fighting. Sometimes, it is more of a kind of responsibility and responsibility. Yuang said gently. Che, stop. You will only get yourself into greater trouble. Kong Xian said cautiously. Che sneered. Dilemma? My strength is growing, I can feel it. As he spoke, the water element around Che's body began to become more unstable, forming a black vortex. He stretched out his palm, preparing to release a more powerful attack. Kong Xian sighed, and suddenly felt a warm power emitting from the water element gem in his hand. He realized this might be the key to solving the problem. Yuang, are you ready? Kong Xian asked in a low voice. Yuang nodded. Although her strength was almost exhausted, she still looked at Che firmly. Her water elemental Pokemon surrounded her body, and her eyes shone with determination. Kong Xian held the magic wand and the water elemental gem tightly and began to chant a complex spell. As he chanted, the gem began to emit blue light, connecting with his magic wand. Che's attack was about to be launched, and the black vortex in his body reached its peak. But at this moment, Kong Xian's spell was completed. A blue beam of light shot out from the water elemental gem, passed through the wind barrier, and directly illuminated Che's body. Che felt a powerful purify force penetrate into his body, and his body began to tremble involuntarily. The black power gradually disappeared and was replaced by a blue beam of light. Kong Xian stopped singing, and he saw Che's expression change from rage to surprise, and then to relief. What kind of power is this? Che asked tremblingly. This is the original power of Yanhuan continent, and it exists to maintain the harmony of the continent. Do you feel it? This is not a power used to attack or monopolize, it is a responsibility. Kong Xian said calmly. Che looked at the water element in his body that was gradually returning to normal, then looked at the water element gem in Kong Xian's hand, and finally nodded. I understand, Kong Xian. Yuang, thank you all. Yuang smiled and put down her magic wand. Power is a double-edged sword, Che. If you use it well, you can protect yourself and others. If you use it poorly, It may destroy yourself. Che took a deep breath and looked at the setting sun and soaring in the sky. It's time to return to Evergreen Lake. I have a lot to do. Kong Xian and Yuang nodded and watched Che Fei return to the lake. The two turned around to leave, but before leaving, Kong Xian glanced at the water element gem in his hand. There's still a lot more to be done with this gem, he said softly. Yuang smiled. Yes, and so do we. Soon, the scenery on the road began to change, from dense forests to desolate volcano landscape. The fiery red rocks and the rising sulfur smoke form a beautiful but dangerous picture. It seems that we will enter the activity range of the fire element Pokémon, Kong Xian said with a frown. Period. Chapter 242. It seems to be performing some kind of ritual. Yuang nodded and looked around. She felt a wave of heat coming towards her face. Yes, fire element Pokémon are usually more aggressive, so we should be more careful. The two of them were walking cautiously when suddenly, a violent vibration came from the ground, almost making them fall. They looked up and saw a huge volcano mouth spewing lava and gray smoke. The volcano here seems to be very active, Moonshadow said nervously. Kong Xian took out a fire element gem, touched it lightly, and felt the active power inside it. The fire elemental gem also reacted somewhat, but it shouldn't affect our ability to move forward. The two of them bypassed a mouth of volcano and came to a wide plain. The plain is covered with cracks and flames, and a group of fire element Pokémon are playing in it. Kong Xian and Yuang stopped and observed. Look! There, those little fire elemental Pokémon seem to be performing some kind of ritual. Yuang pointed to the distance. Kong Xian held the magic wand and the fire elemental gem tightly, feeling that the connection between them became more obvious. Maybe we can try to communicate with them, but we need to be careful. Yuang smiled. I know you always like to communicate with Pokémon to see if you can establish a friendly relationship with them. Kong Xian took a deep breath and felt the power in the fire elemental gem with his heart. He began to chant a spell softly, and the sound of the spell became louder and louder, eventually forming a small fire spin on the plain. The fire element Pokémon noticed this change. They stopped playing and gathered around the fire spin. One of the largest fire element Pokémon came out. It looked at Kong Xian and Yuang, and then at Fire Spin. Who are you? Why are you here? It asked in a hoarse voice unique to the fire element. Kong Xian smiled. I am Kong Xian, and this is Yuang. We are from the Evergreen Pokemon Academy and hope to establish a friendly relationship with the fire element Pokemon. The fire element Pokemon hesitated for a moment. Evergreen Pokemon Academy. I've heard of it. So, what benefits can you bring to us? After finishing his words, Kong Xian gently touched the fire element gem in his hand and looked at the fire element Pokémon in front of him, who were curious and hesitant. This fire element gem not only contains the power of the fire element, but is also a medium to stimulate potential. If you are willing, it can help you improve your own abilities. The fire element Pokémon exchanged glances with each other, and the discussion gradually increased. The flames flickering on their bodies seemed to reflect the emotional fluctuations in their hearts. Improve abilities. The largest fire elemental Pokémon asked in disbelief. You mean, this gem can make us stronger? Kong Xian nodded. Yes, but this is not a simple increase in power. It is more like a guide, allowing you to better understand and master the essence of the fire element. Yuang stood aside and watched this scene with a smile. She knew that Kong Xian had always adhered to the concept of peaceful coexistence and common progress with Pokémon. How do you prove that what you said is true? The fire elemental Pokémon asked. Kong Xian pondered for a moment, and then gently touched the elemental gem of fire with his magic wand. A weak flame immediately appeared on the gem. This flame floated over and slowly fell on the largest fire element Pokémon. A warm current penetrated its body, a warmth and strength it had never felt before. Chapter 243. A warm flame energy. The fire element Pokémon showed a surprised expression, then turned to Kong Xian. I feel it. It's true. It said in an almost shocked tone. Kong Xian smiled. This is just the beginning. If we can build trust, more possibilities will be revealed to you. The fire element Pokémon took a few steps back and discussed in low voices with the other fire element Pokémon. Finally, it walked up to Kong Xian and Yuang again. We are willing to try. But if you go back on your word, the consequences, you should know. Kong Xian nodded sternly. I understand that the rage of fire elemental Pokémon cannot be underestimated. But please believe that we have no intention of deceiving you. The fire elemental Pokemon nodded slightly, seeming to accept the answer. Kong Xian gently took out the fire element gem. It looked particularly charming in the sunlight, as if it captured the essence of fire. He smiled slightly and tapped the gem with his magic wand. A warm flame energy began to flow out of the gem, echoing with his magic wand. You ready? Kong Xian asked in a calm voice. The fire element Pokemon nodded, the flames rising and falling on their bodies, as if to express their expectations and curiosity. Kong Xian began to chant the spell. His voice was low and mysterious. As the speed of his chanting gradually increased, the fire elemental gem also began to glow with blazing light. Suddenly, a red beam of light erupted from the gem and hit the center of the plane directly. The fire element Pokemon all felt a strong warmth penetrate their bodies, making them feel as if they were reborn as normal. The largest fire elemental Pokemon walked up to the light pillar and touched this magical power. This is. It looked surprised. Kong Xian smiled. This is the improvement brought by the fire element gem. How do you feel? I have never felt so full and powerful. The largest fire element Pokemon was obviously very satisfied. It looked at its body. My flames are purer and more active than before. Yuang stood aside and observed all this with a smile. She said softly, Kong Xian, you really did it. Kong Xian turned back and smiled, then turned to the fire element Pokemon. Now, are you willing to establish a deeper relationship with us, please? Give me flowers. The fire elemental Pokemon looked at each other and then nodded. The largest fire element Pokemon said, you have proven your sincerity, and we are willing to establish a friendly relationship with you. By the way, do you have other elemental gems? After Kong Xian heard the question about the fire element Pokemon, he smiled slightly, waved the magic wand in his hand, and took out 3 gems of different colors from his storage ring. 1 blue representing water, and 1 green represents the wind, and the last khaki represents the ground. Yes, these are all elemental gems, and each one has powerful power. Kong Xian said slowly. The fire element Pokemon focused their eyes on these 3 gems, and the flames trembled slightly on their bodies, as if they were feeling the energy of these gems. In that case, have you ever considered the consequences of putting these 4 elemental gems together? The fire elemental Pokemon reminded Kong Xian in its unique voice. Kong Xian looked back at Yuang, who nodded slightly, as if telling him that this was an issue worth considering. Kong Xian took a breath of air. Period. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244. Let's go together. What do you mean? Kong Xian narrowed his eyes slightly and his expression became serious. The fire elemental Pokemon nodded. Although the 4 elemental gems each have powerful power, they are also incentives to attract greedy people. Once lost, the consequences will be disastrous. Kong Xian took a deep breath and understood what the fire element Pokemon meant. He thought for a moment and then said, what you said makes sense. Is there any 537 method that can solve this problem? A trace of excitement flashed in the eyes of the fire elemental Pokemon. It is rumored that there is an ancient secret method that can merge these 4 elemental gems into one to form an all-powerful elemental gem. In this way, not only can the risk of loss be avoided, but also the power of each element comes together. There was a hint of interest in Kong Xian's eyes. Merge into one? This sounds very good. Do you know where this secret method can be found? The fire element Pokemon shook his head. This is a long-lost secret, but I believe that if anyone can find it, that person must be you, Kong Xian. Yuang interjected from the side. Then why don't we look for the secret method? If we succeed, then the relationship between us and Pokemon will be closer. Upon hearing Yuang's suggestion, the fire elemental Pokemon began to discuss it. We can't leave here. This is our route. A fire elemental Pokemon said firmly. Yes, this volcano landscape is our home, and we have the responsibility to protect it. Another fire elemental Pokemon also expressed the same view. Kong Xian nodded slightly to express his understanding. Although he hopes that powerful fire element Pokemon can go with him, he also respects their choice. Looking at these enthusiastic fire elemental Pokemon, Kong Xian felt secretly pleased. These free-spirited and energetic Pokemon, even if disembodied, possess nobler souls than many humans. Kong Xian took a deep breath after hearing the words of Moon Shadow and Fire Elemental Pokémon, feeling as if his body was enriched by new goals and hopes. Fire Element Pokémon, I will go find this secret method. But before I leave, I hope you can protect this volcano region. Kong Xian turned around and looked at the Fire Element Pokémon. His voice was calm and firm. The Fire Element Pokémon began to discuss each other, and the flames jumped between them, as if it was a way of communication. Finally, the largest Fire Elemental Pokémon stood up. Kong Xian, don't worry, we will protect this land and ensure that volcano will not erupt. It looked at the Pokémon around it, and then continued, but I must remind you, I heard that in Yanhuang continent there is an ancient underwater castle in the Western Sea, and it is said that there are clues to this secret method inside. Kong Xian's eyes lit up. Undersea castle, right? This gave me a direction, thank you. The Fire Element Pokémon smiled. We also hope you can succeed. After all, this is related to the future of all elements 4.1 and Pokémon Yuang walked over and gently pulled Kong Xian's sleeve. Kong Xian, I think I should go with you. Kong Xian looked back at Yuang, feeling the determination in her eyes, and smiled. Okay, let's go together, eh? Few days later, Kong Xian and Yuang set foot in the Western Sea on a crystal ship driven by Pokémon. Period. Chapter 245 Huge Shadow. In the Western Sea of Yanhuang continent, a vast expanse of water extends to the sky. Soaring in the sky is clear, and the sun shines on the sparkling sea, shining like endless gems. Kong Xian and Yuang stood on a crystal boat driven by Pokémon. The breeze blew by, bringing a bit of coolness and refreshing. This sea area is really beautiful. Yuang sighed as she looked at the sea in the distance. Kong Xian smiled and nodded. Yes, the beauty of nature is always amazing. But our mission is to find the underwater castle. Don't let this beautiful scenery distract us. The crystal ship moved forward slowly on the sea. Kong Xian and Yuang stood quietly on the bow, staring ahead. Suddenly, there were ripples under the sea surface, and a huge shadow began to gradually appear. 14 What is that? Yuang asked nervously. Kong Xian frowned and stared at the huge shadow, then a smile appeared on his face. Don't worry, it's a sea beast and it doesn't look very ferocious. As time went by, the sea beast came leisurely. It was huge, like a normal hill, covered with green scales, and its long tail swung on the water, causing ripples. However, the sea beast's eyes were full of wisdom, and seemed to be able to understand the existence of Kong Xian and Yuang. Kong Xian stretched out his hand and gently touched the water, establishing a special connection with the sea beast. He began to communicate with the sea beasts in Pokémon language, while Moon Shadow stood quietly aside, observing the scene. It said that the underwater castle is nearby, but it needs to cross a dangerous underwater cave. Kong Xian conveyed the sea beast's words to Yuang. Yuang frowned slightly. Dangerous underwater cave? How should we move forward? Kong Xian thought for a moment and then said, the sea beast mentioned a special crystal called prismarine, which can guide the direction in the cave on the seabed. We need to find these prismarines first before we can move forward safely. Moon Shadow nodded, and the two decided to start searching for prismarine. The crystal ship slowly lowered its height and dived under the sea. The water around them became clearer, and transparent sea creatures were swimming around them, as if to welcome their arrival. Soon after, they discovered a huge prismarine, which emitted attracts blue light and was embedded in the seabed like a gem. Kong Xian reached out and touched it, and immediately felt a surge of information pouring into his mind. This prismarine can guide us in the direction to the cave on the bottom of the sea. Kong Xian told Yuang. The two followed the guidance of prismarine and dived into the deep sea. Gradually, they came to a huge underwater cave, with a faint blue light shining through the darkness. The inner wall of the cave is covered with all kinds of strange corals and aquatic plants, just like underwater wonderland normal. This place is really beautiful. Yuang sighed. Kong Xian nodded, but we have to be careful, there may be unknown dangers hidden here. He held the prismarine in his hand tightly and continued to lead them forward. Suddenly, there was a low rumble, the cave began to shake, and huge water waves hit them. A huge ocean monster rushed out of the deep sea. It was huge, its scales shone with a golden light, and its mouth revealed sharp teeth. It seems that this is the danger in the cave, Kong Xian said calmly. Period. Chapter 246 The Tall Water-type Pokémon. The roar of the sea monster shook the entire cave, and the water surged rapidly, disrupting the surrounding scene. Kong Xian stood on the bow of the crystal ship with a firm gaze, and the prismarine in his hand still emitted a faint blue light. And Yuang was also ready, her hands gently groping for the Pokeball beside her, ready to summon her Pokemon partners at any time. The ocean monster opened its huge mouth, and a huge wave hit Kong Xian and Yuang with astonishing power. Kong Xian waved the prismarine in his hand without hesitation, and a blue light shot out from it, turning into a blue shield, blocking the huge waves. Summon Pokemon quickly! Kong Xian shouted. Yuang nodded, raised his hand and pressed the button on the Pokeball. In an instant, a tall water-type Pokemon appeared in front of her. This Pokemon has blue scales, a dual wing beat that undulates like normal waves, and a pair of bright eyes full of courage. See. Crown Dragon. Moonshadow called out the Pokemon's name. Triganosaurus unfolds its dual wing beat and floats lightly in the air, ready to deal with the attack of sea monsters. Its body exudes a powerful water-type energy, just like the power of the sea gathered together. Kong Xian also pressed the Pokeball in his hand, and a fire attribute Pokemon appeared next to him. This Pokemon has a flaming appearance, its dual wing beat burns like a flame, and its eyes are firm and fiery. Fire Phoenix. Kong Xian called out the Pokemon's name. The flame Phoenix spreads its wings and flies, its body emitting hot flames, preparing to deal with the threat of sea monsters. It is the master of fire type and can master the power of blazing flames. The sea monster seemed to feel pressure when it saw two powerful Pokemon appearing, but it did not flinch. It roared again and sprayed a huge water column from its mouth, rushing toward Kong Xian and Yuang like a waterfall. Sea Crown Dragon deployed dual wing beat and released powerful water-type energy, forming a water wall to block the water column. The water wall and water column met together, and the violent collision stirred up water mist all over the sky. The flame Phoenix spreads its wings and flies up to soaring in the sky, preparing to carry out an aerial attack on the sea monsters. It burned with raging flames, and fireballs gathered in its mouth. Fireballs were fired continuously, like meteors piercing the night sky, aiming at the vital parts of the sea monster. The sea monster felt a strong pressure from the two Pokemon and began to become violent. It moves its giant fin-like fingers in an attempt to fend off the Pokemon's attacks. Water jets continued to spray, and fireballs exploded like fireworks. The cave was filled with water mist and fire inside the cave. The fierce collision between the water column and the fireball seemed to trigger a natural battle. The water mist and firelight intertwined, making the entire cave look like a dream. The sea monster roared and waved its huge flipper fingers, trying to repel the incoming Pokemon. Kong Xian paid close attention to the movements of Flame Phoenix, Jin Jin Zhao, and he knew that this battle should not be underestimated. The Flame Phoenix flies in the air at high speed, and each fireball is accurately aimed at the vital points of the sea monster, triggering bursts of flame explosions. The sea monster is troubled by flames. Although it is physically powerful, it seems to be struggling in this battle of elements at the same time. Triganosaurus showed strong stability under the impact of the water column. It used powerful water-type energy to maintain the solidity of the water wall. Chapter 247 turns into a ball of pink light. The water flow of the water wall has always been in confrontation with the water column, forming a fierce water duel. The Sea Crown Dragon's eyes were firm, and it knew that it had the task of protecting Kong Xian and Yuang. Yuang, continue to put pressure on the ocean monster. Kong Xian shouted loudly. Yuang held the Pokeball tightly, her eyes firm, commanding the sea dragon to continue to maintain the water wall, not giving the sea monster a chance to breathe. She knew that as long as she continued to persist, the sea monster would inevitably collapse under the combined attack of Pokemon. The sea monster roared, seeming to feel despair. Its body gradually became weak, and the light on its scales dimmed. The Flame Phoenix took the opportunity to increase its attack intensity. The fireballs aimed at the head of the sea monster, causing an explosion, and the flames burned wantonly on its body. In the end, the sea monster could no longer resist it. It let out a shrill howl, quickly shrank its body, turned into a ball of pink light, and dissipated in the cave. The battle is over. The water mist and firelight in the cave gradually dissipated, revealing a scene of restored tranquility. Kong Xian and Yuang breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that their Pokemon partners were also safe. Sea Crown Dragon and Flame Phoenix are back in the Pokeball, waiting for the next call. Silence returned to the entire cave, with only a faint light falling on the cave wall. We succeeded, Yuang said to Kong Xian with a smile. Kong Xian nodded and said with emotion, although this challenge is difficult, it also gives us a deeper understanding of the power of Pokemon. Suddenly, Their attention was attracted by a special light in the cave. Deep in the cave, there is a bright prismarine floating quietly, emitting a track's blue light. It seems to be the spoils of the battle. Kong Xian walked towards the prismarine and touched it gently. Immediately, a stream of information poured into his mind. He understood the function of this prismarine, which could guide them to the underwater castle. This prismarine will guide us in the direction to the underwater castle. Kong Xian told Yuang. Yuang nodded happily. Then let's move on. The two boarded the crystal ship again, and the light of prismarine guided their way forward. The crystal boat moved forward slowly, passing through the depths of the cave. Kong Xian and Yuang sat on the boat, staring at the blue light in front of them. The direction of the light guided the path forward. The cave is still full of mysterious atmosphere. The corals and aquatic plants on the walls are like a wonderland under the sea. From time to time, small fish swim by, adding a sense of vitality. Kong Xian and Yuang's Pokémon partners were summoned again, and they immediately flew around the crystal ship, vigilantly patrolling the surrounding sea floor. This underwater world is full of unknown dangers, and they need to remain vigilant at all times. It seems that we are getting closer to the underwater castle, Yuang said, her eyes full of expectation. Kong Xian nodded and responded, yes, prismarine has been leading us. However, we cannot relax our vigilance yet. After all, the castle may hide various puzzles and tests. The crystal boat gradually penetrated deep into the sea, but under the guidance of light, and they passed through one spectacular ocean landscape after another. Huge coral reefs stretched out around them, and they were amazed by the colorful corals and various strange underwater creatures. Chapter 248. Open this crystal door. The Pokémon partners also observed this strange world with excitement. Suddenly, a magnificent scene appeared in front of him. They saw a huge crystal door, engraved with exquisite patterns and mysterious symbols, and emitting a mysterious blue light. This is undoubtedly the entrance to the underwater castle. That's the entrance to the underwater castle, Yuang said excitedly. Kong Xian smiled and nodded. It seems that our adventure is about to enter a new stage. But first, we need to open this crystal door. They stopped the crystal boat and walked towards the crystal door. The symbol on the door seems to be shining with light, exuding a mysterious power. Kong Xian stretched out his hand and gently touched the surface of the crystal door, trying to sense the mechanism behind the door. The crystal door trembled slightly, then slowly opened, revealing a deep passage. The passage is dark and mysterious, and seems to hide countless secrets. Moonshadow held a Pokeball tightly, ready to summon Pokémon partners in case of emergency. Kong Xian walked in front, his eyes focused and alert. He knew that there might be various traps in the castle, and they needed to be dealt with carefully. The crystal door slowly closed, isolating them from the outside world, leaving only a faint blue light. They moved forward in the passage, sometimes passing through narrow passages, sometimes passing through spacious halls. The interior of the castle is filled with exquisite carvings and blue crystal decorate, and the murals on the walls tell the ancient legends of Yanhuang continent. Suddenly, a breeze blew by, and a soft singing sound came. Kong Xian and Yuang stopped and listened attentively. The singing is clear and beautiful, as if it comes from an ancient inheritance. What is this sound? Moonshadow asked softly. Kong Xian frowned and said thoughtfully, this sound seems to be made by some kind of trap or mechanism in the castle. We must be careful and not take it lightly. 11. They moved on, following the lead of the song. A huge crystal door appeared at the end of the passage. In front of the door was a crystal stand with a blue gem placed on it. The song seemed to come from the gem. Kong Xian carefully observed the crystal door and found that there were some ancient symbols and words engraved on the door, which seemed to be a kind of password. He began to study the symbols, trying to solve the mystery of the door. Please give me flowers. These symbols seem to be related to music, Kong Xian said with a frown. He began to wonder how to connect the symbols to the singing. Yuang stared at the blue gem, and suddenly her Pokeball glowed faintly, and her Pokémon companions were summoned. It's her musical Pokémon? 10 Pokémon with colorful feathers on their wings. Music. Pokémon, can you help us solve this mystery? Moonshadow asked. 0. The music Pokémon nodded, flew briskly to the blue gem, and began to play a beautiful melody. The gemstone seemed to be affected by the music and began to glow with different colors and lights. Kong Xian also joined the cracking ranks. He touched the symbols on the crystal door with his fingers, trying to match the music with the symbols. As the melody of the music continues to change, they gradually get closer to the answer. Suddenly, the symbols and gems emitted a bright blue light, and the crystal door slowly opened to reveal the passage leading to the depths of the castle. They successfully solved the mystery. Great! Yuang said happily. Her musical Pokémon also spins happily in the air, emitting pleasant notes. Period. Chapter 249 Blue Crystal Platform. The crystal door slowly opened, revealing the passage leading to the depths of the castle. The blue gem at the door continued to emit a pleasant melody, as if welcoming them to deeper adventure. Kong Xian and Yuang exchanged a look, and then decided to move on. They stepped into the passage, and the crystal door slowly closed behind them, isolating them from the outside world. The light in the passage was dim, and the blue crystal walls emitted a faint light, barely illuminating the journey ahead of 750. Kong Xian led Yuang forward cautiously, searching the surroundings vigilantly. The passage stretched in twists and turns, seemingly without an end. They passed through room after room, each room decorated with a different theme, and the murals on the walls told ancient legends and history. Every room exudes mystery and tranquility, as if time has stood still here. Suddenly, they entered a huge hall. In the center of the hall is a huge blue crystal platform, with an emerald green treasure box placed on the crystal platform. The treasure box emits a shimmer that catches the eye. It seems to be the focal point of the room. Kong Xian and Yuang approached the treasure box and observed it carefully. The surface of the treasure box is inlaid with exquisite patterns and looks very ancient. There is a small hole on the lid, which seems to be designed to place some kind of item. Yuang asked cautiously, "What do you think this treasure box is?" Kong Xian stared at the treasure box and thought. It may be an ancient storage box, and the small hole may be to place a specific key or jewelry. His eyes were thoughtful. Suddenly, they heard a deep voice, as if coming from deep in the hall. The voice was full of mystery and warning. "Brave, you have set foot on my territory." The voice echoed in the hall, seeming to come from the guardian of the castle. Kong Xian and Yuang looked around alertly, but still couldn't find the source of the sound. The voice continued, "This treasure box is my treasure. You can only get it by completing my test." Test? Yuang whispered to himself. Kong Xian stood in front of the treasure box and said respectfully, "Please tell us, Guardian, that we are willing to accept your test." The voice responded, "Okay, brave men. You need to answer a question for me. If you answer it correctly, the treasure box will be yours. But if you answer it wrong, you must stay and bear the corresponding consequences." Kong Xian and Yuang nodded, ready to face the test. They know this is the only way forward. The voice continued, "The problem is, I am an ancient guardian, but I can teleport to anywhere. I am silent, but I can listen to all the sounds in the world. I am transparent, but I can see everything. I am what?" Kong Xian and Yu Ying thought in silence, trying to understand the meaning of this puzzle. The atmosphere in the hall becomes tense, and they know the answer may be related to their progress. Finally, Kong Xian smiled slightly and said the answer, "You are the wind." The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became relaxed, as if a difficult problem had been solved. 2.6. The voice responded, "Correct. You got the answer right. The treasure box is your reward." The lid of the treasure box slowly opened, revealing the treasure inside. There was an emerald green gem inside, emitting a soft light. Kong Xian carefully picked up the gem, feeling the energy it contained. Yuang said happily, "We succeeded." Chapter 250 Gemstones are your reward. Kong Xian held the emerald green gem tightly and felt its warm touch, feeling an inexplicable excitement in his heart. This gem seems unusual and full of mysterious power. The voice in the hall sounded again, this time full of gratification. "Brave, your wisdom makes me happy. This gem is your reward, and it will help you gain more strength on the way forward." Kong Xian bowed slightly and expressed his gratitude. "Thank you for your test and reward, Guardian. We will continue to move forward and complete our mission." The sound gradually dissipated, and the atmosphere in the hall became calm. Kong Xian carefully put the gem into his pocket, then turned to Yuang and showed a confident smile. "We finally got the first key, Yuang. Now, let's go back to the academy and see what this gem can bring." "What surprise do you have for us?" Yuang nodded in agreement and said excitedly, "Yes, Dean. This gem must have special power and can help us better protect the Pokémon Academy." The two stepped onto the passage again and continued to travel through the secret space of the castle. The blue crystal walls sparkle in the shimmer of gemstones, giving the passage a mysterious and serene atmosphere. They felt much more relaxed because they had successfully passed the first test. At the end of the passage is a huge stone door, engraved with ancient runes and flowing with a faint light. Kong Xian stretched out his hand and gently touched the runes on the door. A warm energy passed into his palm, and the door slowly opened, revealing a new room. They entered the room and were immediately shocked by what they saw. This room is spacious and tall, and the walls are covered with various colored crystals, each crystal shining with brilliant light. In the center of the room is a huge crystal column. The crystals on the column emit colorful lucas, like a mysterious pagoda. Kong Xian and Yuang felt as if they were in a fairyland. They circled the crystal column and carefully observed each crystal, each with its own unique color and shape. There are red fire crystals, blue ice crystals, green wind crystals, and golden thunder crystals, each of which is a precious treasure. Yuang said excitedly, "The crystals here are so beautiful, Dean. They must contain rich energy." Kong Xian nodded and said thoughtfully, "Yes, Yuang. These crystals may be part of the castle, and they have special powers. We should study them carefully to see if we can use them to help the Pokémon Academy." The two began to study different crystals separately, carefully observing their abilities and energies. Kong Xian chose a blue 907 ice crystal. The surface of the ice crystal has delicate lines, which seems to contain the power of cold. He gently touched the ice crystal and felt a chill coming into his palm, but at the same time, he also felt a surge of ice wisdom. Yuang chose a golden thunder crystal. The surface of the thunder crystal flashed with spark, exuding a powerful energy. She gently touched the thunder crystal and felt the power of electricity gathering at her fingertips, as if she could control the power of thunder and lightning. Kong Xian and Yuang exchanged their findings. They found that each crystal represented the power of an element, and these powers seemed to be able to be stimulated and used. Period. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.